Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to another episode of the Cold Country Podcast, where we discuss everything WVU sports. I'm your host, Ian McIntyre, and as always, I am joined by Matt Howe and Tyler Cobb. Gentlemen, how are we?
I'm happy to be here. How are you?
I'm doing just fine. It's hot outside. We got a heat advisory in West Virginia, man. It's been hot all week. I remember waking up on Monday, and I could hardly believe how hot it was outside.
It felt cold today this morning. It was 78 degrees. But it's
What
been
time
up
did
in
you
the
get up? Because it was
90s.
when I got up.
That was about 6:30.
Well, there you go. I ain't waking up that early.
No, I got up about 9. I didn't make my way outside until about 10. But,
That's about what time I got outside, and it was like 85 already and rising.
Yep. I don't know when the hottest day is supposed to be. It may already pass. I remember how hot it was on Monday. That was just bad. That was just bad heat.
It's been bad all week.
I can only imagine how bad it is for these boys practicing football up in Morgantown, man. If they're playing on the practice field outside and all that gear.
That's conditioned.
Well, right now it's summer. They're probably working, but we're waiting to fall camp till they actually fully lock in.
That's true. But still, like Rich Rod's probably got them doing their own routine, especially on law school, that part of law school that they're running up and down all the time. I guarantee you some guys are still over there running up and down.
Focused up.
Anyway, boys, let's get straight down to business. Want to talk a little bit of scheduling matrix for basketball. So it looks like at home, we got a good mix of teams. We're playing some teams twice, as you guys can see. We got Kansas State twice, UCF twice. Playing Colorado at home. We played them away last year. That was a decent win for us. This is men's. I forgot to mention as well. But looking here, it's a good mix of teams. We got Houston away again, which annoys me. I know we played them at home last year, but we played them twice. So, it's whatever. But I wish we could just play them home at once one year. But anyway, Tyler, what are your thoughts on this? I'm excited for the season, but then again, looking at Houston,
It's basketball scheduling matrix are interesting compared to football, because in football, especially in the super conference era, you don't play all of the teams. In basketball, you play all teams at least once and then some twice. So like you said, you get Kansas State twice, UCF twice, Cincinnati twice. I do like that UCF and Cincinnati are both twice. Those are both relatively travelable games. Obviously, UCF is down in Florida, so that's a bit longer of a traveling distance, but Cincinnati's right there. So for fans that want to go to both the home and away games, that's very plausible. So I like that UCF and Cincy are home and away. It gives the fans some, a little rivalry to go travel to. I think your Arizona, Iowa State, and Houston, three of the tougher teams in the Big 12, being on the road is difficult. So especially in year one of a head coach in the Big 12, we all know the Big 12 is probably the first or second strongest conference. That's going to be rough for Hodge. So I'm interested to see how he handles playing not only Arizona, not only Houston, but all three of Arizona, Houston, and Iowa State on the road. I'm looking at that Kansas game at home. We beat them on the road last year. They can come on back to Morgantown. Morgantown magic against the Jayhawks is always happening.
That's exactly what I was thinking.
I expect the Mountaineers to handle business against the Jayhawks at home this year. Other than that, I don't really have too much to say about it. I think the biggest thing is those three games you're playing at home and away, and then you've got three pretty tough away games in Arizona, Houston, and Iowa State.
Yep, that's exactly what I was thinking. Speaking of that Iowa State team, I know we beat them at home last year. It's going to be difficult to beat them on the road. Arizona handed it to us at home last year. They were sort of the first team to put a dent in our quote-unquote title aspirations whenever we were high on ourselves early in the season.
Well, we beat them in that the Bahamas tournament, and then got, like you said,
whooped.
Whooped. We got whooped at home.
We got humbled.
Yeah.
Houston beat us by 30 plus points. I remember watching that game and turning it off not too long after I claw the deficit. I hate to do that with the Mountaineers, but I do it. But yeah, I mean, you were talking about UCF being at home and away, and I think I mentioned before about on a previous podcast episode about how easy it is actually to just get to Florida. I know, like mainly people do it for football because you only play them once in football, and basketball is just not as highly attended of an event. But it is like actually relatively easy for Mountaineer fans to go down to Florida if they want to. We got that direct flight from Clarksburg, which the team fly out of anyway. So, I mean, for those Mountaineer fans that like to travel for basketball, there you go. That's probably the easiest place to get to besides Cincy. So that's nice that we get to play them twice. But yeah, I'm with you. I don't think there's much more to say. If we could beat Kansas at home again, that would be fantastic. I never like to see Kansas win, even against teams that I don't care about. So whenever they play us, it just means that much more.
Hodge has been on a recruiting masterclass thus far, and he's not done. Last year's Big 12 steals leader is currently on a visit, as far as I'm aware. I expect an above-average season for a year-one head coach under Ross Hodge. I think the schedule, as far as the games we get at home, sets up to do that well. It's not a terribly tough home schedule. It's going to be about how WVU handles those away games.
Yeah, I think so. Just looking at the schedule, we have any early predictions on who could be at the top of the conference?
I think BYU will do pretty well again, especially since they got the number one high schooler.
Yeah, I think they got the number one recruit in the whole country. So BYU is definitely going to be a contender. I think Iowa State's going to be a contender up there too. The question is, you were talking about Ross Hodge having a good first year. Does he get us into the tourney?
No. Well, I'm going to say no. Big 12 is tough. I'm going to lean no. You asked who I thought will be at the top of the Big 12. Kevin Sampson is always going to have those Houston boys ready. So even what they lose to the portal and NBA draft, I think Houston will be at the top again. I don't know if WVU makes tourney year one. A little early to start, schedule predictions. We're pretty far out. Haven't even started football yet. But I would be shocked if we go tourney year one.
I mean, who knows? It would be fantastic. I'm with you on the train that Ross Hodge could have a way better opening year than any of us think, and it would be cool to make the tournament. I think I'm with you, though. I would err more on the side of caution. But then again, you want to win as many games as possible.
DeSleazy almost had us there. So if DeSleazy can do it, maybe Hodge can do it. Mr. Hodgester.
Hadn't heard that one. That's a good one.
Mr. Hodgester.
Yeah.
I like that one better than his initial nickname that Twitter gave him, which is hilarious. But we can't say it, right? Like that's actually like a monetization issue.
I don't know. I don't know what you're talking about. Ian's gonna have to text me. I really don't know what you're talking about.
Okay, yeah, I'll text you. It's fine.
Okay.
I may have worded it weird, but you'll know what I'm talking about. Anyway,
defensive-minded coach, solid home schedule. I'm excited for that Kansas game. I'm excited for the BYU, Tech, and Baylor games at home. Going to be a tough away schedule. Other than that, I don't have too much to say. We'll break it down more when basketball season gets closer, but it's hard to say right now.
Yeah. Man, boys, it is thundering outside. I can hear it in my thing. Hopefully, it's not coming across my mic. That's
I don't know. No.
Okay, cool.
Secondly, on basketball, we're still waiting for old Javon Small to get his name called in the NBA draft.
What pick are we on right now? Because as we're recording, we're watching.
They're on 46.
We're on 46. Matt, you said he was projected 47th?
That's what I saw on ESPN.
So we're on the Celtics pick.
Sorry, Sports Illustrated.
So you're on the Celtics pick now after they traded it. Yes. So
yeah. Come on, Javon. That'd be awesome.
You guys just took center Amari Williams out of Kentucky, 7 foot. ESPN has his strengths. William is a British center with an interesting combination of length, 7'6" wingspan, rebounding prowess, shot blocking timing, and feel as a passer.
Hey, you know what? After
backup-
we
backup center.
after we traded Porzingis, I don't mind that pick. I'll be honest.
Backup
We need,
center.
yeah, backup center. We need someone big. It would have been so awesome to have Joe Mazzulla and Javon Small on the same team. Who knows? I mean, they got another pick coming up. I think the
They have
57 pick.
49 too.
I don't know if it's
Oh, you
49
said
or 57. I think 57 is what they traded for. But
Yeah, you're right.
hopefully
57,
Javon goes earlier than that.
46 and 57. I just want Javon to go. I don't really care which pick he goes.
Exactly.
I just want to hear his name called.
Yeah, best wishes to Javon. We'll probably give you guys an update at some point during the show whenever he actually does get drafted, because now the picks are going to start going pretty quick.
Yep.
So, all right. Do we want to move on to football? Talk a little bit of football because we got a lot of stuff to cover there. A lot of stuff on Twitter.
Yeah, not much about the team or anything. There's not. We're gonna get to West Virginia football's team and stuff, break it down, and eventually a schedule prediction. But this is more of outside stuff. But yes, we should move on to that because I'm excited for it.
All right, so first thing I'm going to bring up is the game promo schedule. Just here. Let me format it correctly. There we go. So, Tyler, give us a rundown here. This is my first time actually looking at it in detail. So,
I have some thoughts. I'm going to save Gold Rush because I have a lot of thoughts about that. It's obviously the very first game of the year. Robert Morris, August 30th is Gold Rush / Family Day. I'll get back to that. I am excited that there's actually a game promo, like the stadium itself for Pittsburgh. There has not been in 2023. It was striped the stadium for the Backyard Brawl in 2023. I don't know what I'm talking.
Yes, it was.
I put on Twitter earlier that it felt like it hadn't been a while since we did an actual stadium promo for Pitt, but I was wrong. Pitt will be striped the stadium. It looked beautiful in 2023. I expect it to be beautiful again this year. I imagine uniforms will be blue lids, gold jersey, blue pants. However, I did see in the Rich Rod era, the first time we ever did stripe the stadium, the uniform was our traditional blue, gold. So my guess is blue, gold, blue. But nonetheless, the stadium will look beautiful. It will be packed. 9-13, Rich Rod's first game against Pitt since the 9-13 game. Going to be fun. Utah, Hall of Fame weekend. Put money on this being the throwback uniforms. It says down at the bottom, 1965 throwback uniforms, Coal Rush and True Blue will be announced at a later date pending on game time selection. I have a hard time seeing any other game being the throwbacks. Maybe homecoming, but I imagine they would do what they've done the past several years for homecoming and wear our traditional blue, gold combo. And I think we talked about this before, but the very first time we ever wore the baby blue helmet throwback uniforms was against Utah. So it'll be cool to see if we do wear it for Hall of Fame weekend, it'll be fun.
That would be nice.
Yeah, nice little coincidence there. Homecoming, like I said, I imagine it'll be blue, gold. And then typically military appreciation is the true blue. However, it does say Coal Rush to be announced at a later date. I don't know if I see Coal Rush being the very last game of the season. I could be wrong, but I just don't see it playing out that way.
No.
If it doesn't, where do you guys see Coal Rush playing out? Because my other thought is, and I saw this on Twitter, I cannot remember who it was that said it, and this is not like official or an official account. It was a burner account just getting his opinion out there, but it was a very valid opinion. How would you guys feel about the Coal Rush uniforms with the American flag decals that they normally put on the military appreciation uniforms?
I get behind it.
Yeah, that's actually what I was thinking when you asked.
Yeah,
So,
I think that would be awesome. I think that would be cool. You've pretty much got – you can map out the home game uniform rotation basically. But other than that, this is what I wanted to get to most about these game day promos is the Gold Rush being for Robert Morris. West Virginia Gold Rush used to be on the level of like a Penn State whiteout, or I'm trying to think of other stadium, themes.
I know what you're talking about.
I
Whiteout.
can't think of any other themes that teams do, but you know what I mean. A Penn State whiteout. I know a Virginia Tech does a stripe the stadium-esque thing. So along those lines, Gold Rush used to be that type of thing for WVU. The stadium was always packed. It was pure gold in the stands if it was a nice weathered game. And now we are using it to help sell tickets against weaker opponents. That is not good. I don't care about wearing Gold Rush or that being like a stadium promo against Robert Morris. It needs to be against Pitt. It needs to be against Utah or Colorado when Dion comes to town. It needs to be a big game at home. It does not need to be against Robert Morris. Now, there's not a ton of big games, quote unquote, at home anymore. Obviously, last year you had Penn State. This year you've got Pitt. Outside of that, it's just a bunch of Big 12 opponents and Robert Morris. That's the only thing I dislike about this is the Gold Rush being for Robert Morris. It has, in recent years, been the first home game of the season has been the Gold Rush. I'm just not a fan of it being against an FCS opponent.
That's true. I never really thought of it that way until you brought it up because, as a longtime fan, it had always been, Gold Rush is versus our weaker opponent, normally our home opener. That's the way it's always been for a good time now. But I would think as a promoter, there's something that they know that we don't, where they're either drawing in more revenue or they're getting more views on television or whatever it could be. So there's a reason behind it. But as a fan, I agree with you. I would like to push more towards the traditional value of the Gold Rush.
It doesn't seem like, because that the stadium is not going to be nearly full. I'm trying to get a picture to pull up here in a second, but the stadium is not going to be completely full for Robert Morris, and so
Right.
Gold Rush is going to be kind of half done, in my opinion. I'm going to pull an image up, Ian, if you want to pull it up for me.
Yeah.
Pull that up. Look at that. The aura behind the Gold Rush. The absolute aura behind the Gold Rush. Look at that. I mean, that is a fully gold stadium.
You got those specks of blue in there, but that's the good old days.
The first game that comes to mind, which I don't believe that picture is from, but the first game that comes to mind for me is the LSU game in Morgantown that was Gold Rush.
College game day.
Yeah, in the 2000s with College Game Day here. If you go back and look at that stadium and listen to the crowd, that was, when I said Penn State whiteout level, I mean, that's what it was. We might have 40,000 less fans, but our fans are 10% more rowdy, and they are just as loud when we're winning football games and we have a solid athletic department.
I would love to see it, man. You talking about that LSU game just brings up the memories.
I mean, that's probably one of the biggest games in Morgantown history, and Morgantown was packed. The stadium was packed. It was purely gold. It was beautiful. And now we get to play Robert Morris during the Gold Rush.
Yeah, let's go.
Shame.
That's a shame. Well, I agree. I don't know if they'll change it though. It is what it is. That they don't like to take very much outside criticism when it comes to that stuff because they have their marketing reasons.
However, they do listen to the fans, which is a perfect transition to our next little tidbit.
Yeah, that's true. You go ahead and give the rundown. I'll add the pictures up.
Pull it up. Now, I was a little aggressive on saying that the Twitter community single-handedly made Ren Baker bring back the glossy helmets. Not true. This is probably already in the making, but I will say that Ren listens to his fans because it's been several years now that the fans have been asking for the glossy helmets back. They have not had the glossy helmets since the Tavon days, I believe, because I think they were even matte during like the Will Greer era.
Yeah, I remember those matte gray helmets that they used to wear.
Anyway, this was on Twitter yesterday, and if you'll pull up Ren Baker's response, old Ren Baker giving a "it's so bright" meme to the old glossy helmet. Now that doesn't give an official confirmation, and there has not been an official post made by Ren or WVU football on Twitter or Instagram or anything like that. But I am confidently saying that within the near future, we will be seeing glossy helmets back into the WVU uniform rotation. That is WVU tradition, WVU's identity. I can't be more thrilled to be seeing the glossy helmets back. They just pop on camera for the TV. They pop in person during the sunlight.
They look so much better.
Yeah.
They pop under the lights, especially with those new stadium lights when they're flashing. It's going to look so much better than the matte. I am pumped to see the glossy
The glossy.
back in use.
I agree with you. You know, one thing that I always used to like about the glossy helmets back when we used them was as the game progressed, I'll pull this picture back up again. As the game progressed, you can actually see the dents and the scuff marks in the helmet. And guys take pride in that sort of thing. You know, like you go in for 5 plays and you come out with a new scar. You know what I mean? Like that's motivation. And I love to see that progression throughout the game. I did like to see that progression throughout the game, and I think it'd be fantastic if they brought it back. And also another question I had about the glossy helmets. You know, with modern designs, if you look at our helmets now, you know, you look at the back of it, and you have like the caution warning. Like you can see it here on this picture too, sort of that whole text rundown. You know, we put our Big 12 logo back there, and it's like a big rubber stamp as far as I can see from our modern helmets. Do you guys think that would actually like ruin the effect of some of the gloss? I know like most of it would still look cool, but like would all the modern branding kind of get in the way? I'm curious to think.
I don't think so. I don't think so. I think it'll look just as good as it did. I like what you said. I haven't actually heard that perspective, but with the gloss, it is much easier to see like the scuff marks after a big head-to-head hit or hitting somebody else's pads, and it just creates a scuff mark on your head. You're going to see a lot of those marks in this Rich Rod defense and Zach Alley led defense. They're going to have them boys ready to play hard, hard hitting. Fred Perry is a guy that I like to think of who, again, we'll get more into the specifics of football, schedule predictions, depth chart and whatnot when closer to July and August. But I'm excited to see these helmets. I like what you brought up. It just shows the scars, if you will.
Yeah, definitely. All right, Matt, what do you think about these? For me, they bring back memories whenever I went to the game.
That is exactly right. You hit the nail on the head. First and foremost, they just look better. So you automatically have my vote there. But like you said, I think Tyler was talking about the LSU game. I remember that game. I was there with my my grandparents. I think my uncle was there too. And that era of football is really what got me involved with Mountaineer sports. That's definitely, I take a liking to that, definitely.
So back then, that was pre-gold lids era. So during the gold rush, it was blue helmet, gold jersey, gold pants.
I've always been partial to the blue, personally.
I hope that's what we go back to. Blue helmet and gold pants just seems like WVU identity to me.
Yeah.
Our traditional uniforms for both home and away are blue helmet, blue jersey, gold pants, and blue helmet, white jersey, gold pants. So
that's how I like it.
Blue helmets, gold pants. It is what West Virginia is. It's West Virginia's identity. Glossy helmet adds on to it. It's going to look beautiful in the sun, under the lights. I just love it.
What about the stickers, Ian? They do look like stickers. Like you can even tell on that picture there with the logo slapped on. But like the Nike embedded in the helmet, I think looks good.
Yeah,
If
that
they
looks
do something like
fantastic.
that with the logo on the side, I think it'll look sweet.
Yeah, I think so too. Visor integration is a lot different now. I think they're gonna have a sweet time with that. Tyler, you were talking about the uniforms and
Newer
the different
decals.
combinations. What?
What about the different combinations?
Oh, I was just saying the different combinations. You know what that reminds me of? It reminds me of the Fiesta Bowl that we were in. You remember Bill Stewart coming
Yeah,
in, giving that iconic pregame speech, us going out there, seeing the runaway beer truck
I was about
highlight
to
with
say
Owen
that
Schmidt
was
running.
a beer truck. Owen Schmidt.
Yeah,
That is a phenomenal memory. Those were gloss helmets as well. So, and your point about the decals, like the actual Flying WV, where it looks more like a sticker. Modern decals look far more like it's actually embedded into the helmet. So I think overall the helmet's going to be far better looking than what that on screen actually does.
yeah. I mean, I hope you're right. It was just a question. I don't know. And also the technology in the helmet has changed, which has changed the shape of it ever so slightly. Who knows though? I think it'll look good. You can't go wrong with a glossy helmet. You really can't.
Well, I'm curious to see they're allowing Guardian caps to be worn in game. I mean, I don't know if we'll see more and more people wear those over the years. I hope it's their choice, but I hope not because I don't want to ruin
Right.
the gloss.
I would
But
say if you're in a position where the head injuries are a lot more common, maybe. But ideally, the technology is inside the helmet.
Mm-hmm.
lineman.
Yeah. Best case scenario, you work that technology into the helmet somehow in the coming years, but
Because you want it to look cool. You don't want them to look like they're wrapped in a pillow.
oh
But
yeah.
obviously, you need the function there. So
Yeah. We've got this labeled Project 2005. We can pretty much confirm that this is happening. Again, there hasn't been an official announcement, but we can pretty much confirm this is happening. And there is another. I cannot say this for sure, but I have been told by a reliable source that they are attempting to get the inflatable entrance back into Morgantown.
Hey, that
Guys
would be sick.
know about the inflatable helmet back from the early 2000 age. We didn't put a picture of that up here, but as far as I'm aware, they are also trying to get that back into Morgantown.
Yep. I would like that a lot better in the fire that we do now.
Well, so I
that
like
was
the
a big
fire.
part of the games for me as a kid, seeing them run through the helmet.
Yep.
I think we need a new run out song, if anything. Like, as two former band members yourself, you can probably agree with me in saying that I don't think you can really hear the band when they run out because the stadium erupts so loud. So I
Yeah.
feel like playing music, a run out song over the speakers would do better for that.
I'd have to get a feel for it, I think. I think on the home side, you can hear the band pretty well if you're in that firing cone,
Yeah.
so to speak. I always sat on the away side, and it's definitely a difference when the band is pointing towards you versus not in your direction. So,
Yeah, I remember when I used to go, I always sat on the home side. I forget exactly where our tickets were. I know they were more towards the touchdown terrace whenever I used to go to games. So I was further away from the band for the pregame because the band's.
I don't mean to interrupt, but Javon Small has been selected.
By who?
how long behind are you?
I am.
I saw it like 10 minutes ago and sent it to you.
Well, I'm not looking at my phone, big dog. Why didn't you? Oh my gosh, there's been 2 Kobe's drafted in the second round. Anyway, Javon Small gets drafted in pick 48 by the Memphis Grizzlies.
And we got a Javon Carter copycat here.
So Javon Small will be playing in Memphis, Tennessee for the start of his NBA career alongside John Morant, although I expect the Grizzlies to be making more changes through the offseason after the Desmond Bain trade. But big news for old Mountaineer Nation. Congratulations, Javon Small. I had to interrupt you there, Ian. Sorry.
No, you're good. 2 Javons, both to Memphis. Crazy
Yep.
how that works. I even forget what I was talking about, to be honest with you. Oh, I was talking about where I used to sit. I was further away from the band for pregame. I was more towards touchdown terrace. But I honestly, even if you were on the away side, I would find it hard to be a fan and not have the band play for pregame. You know, it's just something that's happened for so long. Regardless of how it sounds, I think most fans would still want the band to do something. So, but I do agree with you. I think we need a different intro song in general, at least to play over the speakers.
I've always liked Seven Nation Army, even though it is overused. I just like it.
I mean, fair enough. It's a common hype song. Like you were saying, everybody uses it, but everyone likes it. So,
This is true.
you have that. All right, now that we're off the glossy helmet subject, but we're still sticking with Ren Baker here. We got a tweet exchange from Blue and Gold Nation. I'm going to pull up right here.
This one's fun because nothing has been as other than the glossy helmets. Nothing has been confirmed by sources outside of WVU official sources. Blue and Gold Nation is obviously just kind of throwing it out there. Sheets give them the little you never know eyes, and old Ren Baker saying, "Let's have your people talk to my people," and his people is him. It's been an ongoing feud on West Virginia Twitter that Milan Pushkar could be renamed to Sheets Field or Sheets Stadium. A little bit of private equity action. I like this idea.
Absolutely.
If there is a brand that should represent, or that West Virginia should represent, and West Virginia should have in that private equity range, Sheets is it. Milan Pushkar, Sheets Field at Milan Pushkar Stadium has a nice ring to it. I'm all here for it.
I agree with you 100%. You know, when you walk into Sheets, one of the first things you see is a pepperoni roll rack. That's all I got to say.
Enough said. Enough said.
I absolutely love this combination. I mean, of course, it's still all speculation, but from recent talks on social media the past few months, especially, we all knew this was a possibility.
Yeah.
And it'd be great for revenue, hands down.
Somebody said we'll have, before the year starts, we'll have Sheet Stadium and United Bank Coliseum.
That'd be awesome. Because you also imagine, I know United Bank Coliseum, but what about Sheets Field and Sheets Coliseum?
I mean, it's plausible.
Sheets Court. Sheets Court.
I don't know.
I know West Virginians love them some Sheets. So
this
great
just
combination.
If this happens, this just means that nobody from Pittsburgh can ever go into a Sheets again.
Yeah, that's true. They'll
Fine by me.
What is the other local one? At least like we don't have one here, but is it Wawa? I think Wawa is what I'm thinking.
There's Wawa in down south in Texas region is Buc-ee's. There's a lot of Sheets-esque places, but Sheets is the best one.
Man, I think all West Virginians know about the big rest stop in Beckley. How about we take that out and we put in a Buc-ee's? West Virginia can have a Buc-ee's right there.
I'm here for that. How about Raising Cane's coming to Morgantown? That's what I'm excited about.
Dude, yeah, that's going to be so good for the students. You know, everybody in Morgantown's been begging for a Waffle House. You got something close with Raising Cane's. I know we already have Magoo's over in Suncrest, but Cane's is going to be a huge addition for everybody over there.
We've got Huey's, Lane's, and now Cane's.
Three different fried chicken places.
And I can keep all those. How do you keep track of all those in your head?
Lane's and Cane's.
You know, my immediate thought as soon as it was announced that Cane's was going in was, well, I'm probably not eating there until next year. It's going to be so busy. And especially, you have to make a reservation to even get a spot in the drive-thru so that you can't block traffic. I forget exactly where they're putting it, and if they're putting it where I think they're putting it, which is by, like Menards and the Texas Roadhouse there right off the interstate, I think if they put it there, That's the best location for him. I know they said University Town Center. I'm just not exactly sure where. But anyway,
I'm
Raising
just excited
Cane's.
it's coming to Morgantown.
Hey, you'll still be there. You'll still be there.
He'll be there.
I'll be close, but I won't be there.
We're
Well,
gonna miss.
do we want to let me hide this.
We got next. We got something.
Yeah, we want to talk about Group of 5.
Oh, that's right. So, do you want me to just give you the reasoning I wanted to talk about this today?
Yes, I will go ahead and flash the banner and you go ahead.
So, you may be familiar with the YouTube channel known as College Football Budge or CF Budge. I can't even think of his actual name at the moment. But anyway, he did a video the other day about should there be another split. We all know that D1 used to be just Division One, and then I can't remember the year. It was 1970 something, I think, was divided into the FBS and the FCS, the Football Bowl Championship thing, and then the Football Championship subdivision. It was Football Bowl subdivision and Football Championship subdivision or something like that. And that was 50 some years ago. Since then, many teams have been added to the FBS. Many teams have been added to the FCS. Many teams have moved around via conference realignment. We've gone from basically a Power 7 back in the Southwest Conference, the Big 8 and the Big East days, to a Power 4 and practically Power 2 at this point. So my question is, his concept was, should there be another split? My answer was yes. And what I ended up after discussing with a few people, and the train eventually led me to, should there be a Group of 5 playoff? Now, we've talked a lot about the playoff in the past, the changes, what we'd like, what we don't like. It's a never-ending topic in college football, but we don't ever really talk about a Group of 5 having its own playoff. So I would like to hear your thoughts on not necessarily the potential for the Group of 5 to have its own playoff, but do you think it would be a good idea? And if so, how would you have it play out?
That's a pretty loaded question. Matt, you want to go before me or you want me to go ahead?
I would just say that there's so much variability in college football as a whole, because you have teams that historically have done well, and then in the recent era are just not there, and then you have teams that have done well always. You have teams that have never really been good, and really just depending on what conference you're in makes a big difference on your revenue stream. I mean, if you remove them, some of the positives, if you were a G5 school, is that you control all of that. You don't have to look at the power programs and say, where do you want us? You get to say, we're going to make our own TV deal. We're going to set the playoff how we have it. And nobody's happy with the playoff system, right? Everyone's pulling it every which direction. So those are definitely pros. Cons, obviously, you don't have that revenue. And you would look at it as a secondary and lesser conference. When people think of college football, they won't be thinking of you. They'll call it like, I mean, it won't have the same impact. It doesn't have the same importance. Now, does that necessarily mean it's bad? No, but that's one of the things you're trading off. If you get to make the rules, you have to go you have to go along with what comes with that. And if you're not playing the big dogs, so to speak, you can't really call yourself a national champion. It's just it's a trade-off. I don't know if I would lean one way or another.
Ian, would you like to go, or do you want me to respond to what Matt?
Let me go here. I am definitely on that side of revenue and competitiveness as a fan base, being my main rationale of thinking. So Matt's right. When you look at it from a revenue perspective, if you split, there's not as much money to go around for everybody. There's not as much TV coverage, or at least there won't be if a split would happen. The TV coverage would be certainly all local, especially for those smaller schools that would be part of the split. And there wouldn't be enough money to go around at all. The players wouldn't get paid nearly as much, which would further dilute the competitiveness because those guys that are good enough to get paid will go up. So when you talk about it from a revenue perspective, it's not ideal. And then also, if I were a fan of, say, this is D2, but I'll just talk about Fairmont State. If I were to use them as a team I would root for, if I'm a fan of Fairmont State, I want them to be in the competitive landscape of all teams. Now, they would have their own conference, obviously. We would play those certain conferences and those certain teams throughout the whole season. And those would be the games that would matter. But overall, I would want to be competitive throughout the entire, you know what I'm talking about, the entire group. And as a fan of West Virginia, on this perspective, it still doesn't please me whenever we know, but we talk about the Big 12 and ACC not being on the same level as the SEC and Big 10. It hurts to talk about because as a fan of WVU, I would always like to believe that we can compete to be the best overall college program in the country. And even for the smaller schools that would potentially be part of that split, as a fan, I would still want to be able to say, yeah, my team at least competes on that level. So there are two sides to it, and I can sort of see why you would be in favor of it. But that's my view. You can go ahead.
So, all right. So you're saying you don't support a Group of 5 playoff, or basically a Group of 5 split from the Power 4?
Not exactly.
So it should still be one. And then Matt, you said the same thing. It should still all be one.
I want to hear what you say before I make up my mind.
So the most common rebuttal to should the Group of 5 have a separate playoff is an overwhelming no from Group of 5 fans, which makes sense. Group of 5 fans want to compete at the highest level. And so splitting them, like you said, Matt, it does make them feel as if they're lesser. When somebody looks at college football, they're not going to look at they're not going to think of Marshall or Boise State or Coastal Carolina or Tulane. They're going to think of Alabama, Ohio State, Texas, Oregon. My thing is that's already the case. If I were to come up to you and say, who's the first 5 teams you think of when you think of college football? Outside of West Virginia, I guarantee none of us name a Group of 5 team. And so not only does that exist already in terms of just general thought, that exists already in what both of you brought up in terms of revenue and the competitive landscape. Right now, Boise State and Oregon are technically competing for the same thing. The ultimate goal of playing in the playoff for the chance to win the national championship. Now, does that mean that their realistic expectations are the same? No. Boise State is not going to look at every year and say, hey, yeah, we're going to make the playoff and we're a national championship contender. That's just not realistic. Whereas for Oregon or Ohio State or Texas, it is. So that competitive landscape you're talking about is already split. And then a rebuttal to that I got the other day was, okay, but it's not only split from Group of 5 to Power 5. If you think about the disparity from the highest Power 5 team to the lowest Power 5 team, Power 4, is Purdue and Wake Forest really competing for the same thing as Oregon and Texas? Obviously not, but there is still differences. Purdue is in the Big Ten. The Big Ten's media deal pays out a lot more money to each of its teams than the Sun Belt's media deal or the Mountain West Conference media deal. So that competitive balance thing is already doesn't exist. And if you want to look at teams like Purdue and Wake Forest to argue that, okay, there's a large competitive imbalance between the top of the Big Ten and the bottom of the Big Ten, yes, but at least they're in the same similar landscape in terms of revenue they're getting to pay NIL to their players. They're in the same recruiting footprint. They obviously don't recruit at the same level, but they have the ability to recruit at a higher level than, say, a Akron does or a Kent State does. So should the Group of Five have a separate playoff? My answer is yes. And Group of Five fans the people that I have discussed that with are unhappy with that, and I'm sure anybody that watches this that is a fan of a Group of Five team is probably unhappy with that. But the reason FCS and FBS split is because it was so imbalanced. It's now become so imbalanced between the Group of Five and Power Five that the Group of Five isn't playing for anything. And I want to add that my opinion on this would be the opposite if the BCS were to still exist. If the BCS were to still exist, my answer would be no, because BCS busters exist back then. If you look at teams like Boise State or teams that were Group of Five back then, TCU, Utah, SMU was still Group of Five at the time, BYU, those were known as BCS buster teams. Those don't exist anymore because even if a Group of Five team wins one round of the playoff, they are never going to win 4 games in the playoff. And we're looking at expanding the playoff even more, so they're going to have an even further path to take.
I like that point. Can I interrupt and ask, how is this? Obviously, there's a difference between. You could say that there are different tiers. And we've discussed the conversation of, are the SEC and Big Ten on a separate tier than the other power conferences? And I would say those power conferences are probably on a separate tier than the Group of Five conferences. So is this conversation different than should the SEC and Big Ten split conversation?
So I think there is a large competitive split between the Group of Five and the Power Five. And now it's muddy, right? Because like if you look at teams in the Power Five like Purdue and like Wake Forest or like Stanford, and then you look at the teams in the Group of Five like Tulane, Memphis, Boise State, teams that are competing at the highest level in the Group of Five, there's obviously some crossover there. But the point is that the lowest team in the Power Five is closer to the highest team in the Group of Five than the highest team in the Group of Five is to like the middle of the pack Power Five teams and the highest level Power Five teams. Now, Boise State could have pulled off an upset against Penn State last year, but was Boise State going to pull off an upset against Penn State, Notre Dame, and Ohio State? Very unlikely.
Probably not.
So, to take that to where you were saying, I think there is a drastic difference between the Power Five and then the Group of Five. And then I think then in the Power Five, it's not based on conference, it's based on teams. If you look at the competitive difference between historically elite programs and then semi-good programs, I wouldn't necessarily call WVU a historically elite program, but I would put them into the category of high-level programs. They're up there with TCU. I'm trying to think of other decent programs like a Wisconsin. Like they're obviously not on the level of Ohio State, Texas, Oregon, Penn State, but they are on that next level below. So I don't think it's the split of SEC, Big Ten, and then ACC, Big 12. It's more of elite programs versus not elite programs. Ohio State, Penn State, Texas, Oregon, LSU, Georgia, Alabama, Michigan. Those are all teams that are levels above the remainder of the Power Five in general, and then the remainder of the Power Five is somewhat levels above the remainder of the group of five.
So I would agree with you there, and say that there are outliers in both directions in both conferences, and I would say that there, I would say it's fine to have a split as long as there's room for the group of five conferences, or excuse me, group of five teams to move into a power conference. Should that be
So,
Yeah.
like promotion relegation type thing, like what the soccer leagues in
yeah,
Europe.
or like how UCF wasn't in a Power Five conference till they joined the Big 12, right?
Yeah.
So that's an example, and I think that makes sense as you develop your program and become a stronger team.
So I
Now,
agree. You can
I
continue.
would say I would argue that you should have an avenue to move the other direction. You know, if there is a team that is consistently the worst out of their conference and are not competitive with anybody else, and they're in the Power Five conference, they're not going to move unless the conference kicks them out. Because why would you? Because of the revenue streams that we talked about. But I would argue that that is something that could and should happen. Uh, Obviously, if it needs to happen. I wouldn't just say whoever's the worst gets kicked down and they have to work their way back up or anything like that. But
So I agree. In an ideal world, there is promotion and relegation in college football. Like Boise State should be in a Power Five conference, and Wake Forest shouldn't. Sorry to all the Demon Deacon fans out there. That is pretty objectively true. The problem with the promotion relegation system is a team like Northwestern, where their university relies heavily upon that Big Ten media package that they like the revenue that they receive from the Big Ten's media package is so high that if they were to be relegated to a conference like the MAC, their revenue stream for football would not nearly be enough, and so it would be difficult for Northwestern to even keep football open for their school. Like there's several schools out there that if they were not in a Power Five conference and did not receive revenue from a Power Five conference's media deal, they would probably be required to drop football as a whole. And
Sure.
So it's difficult to have promotion relegation in terms of, yes, teams can be promoted if they get to that level, but if a team is relegated, it does so much more harm than good for a team. Or
you also have to consider just what the money is actually doing. You know, if you're throwing money at a problem and you're wasting the money because you're not seeing any improvement, you know, that's an investment concept that probably doesn't make any sense to a lot of football fans, but that could be the case where it doesn't make sense to be dumping money into something that isn't working.
it's difficult to say. Like I said, if the BCS system were here and regional conferences were, smaller regional conferences like they used to be, my answer would be no, because a group of five program can be elite, can be a BCS buster, and their season ends with that BCS win on their mind. That's the mark of, hey, we had a successful season. On the other hand, in the current landscape, yes, a group of five team makes it every year. And let's say they do win a game, but then the next game they get blown out by an even better, more elite team. They're not finishing the season with, hey, we had a successful season that ended with a win, a playoff win, or a BCS bowl win. No, we had a successful season, but it ended in ultimate letdown, getting blown out by 30 points by a team we had no business competing with in the first place. And so if it were, 20 years ago, my answer is no. In today's landscape, I feel as if it makes more sense for the group of five to have its own playoff than not, because I don't see a group of five team having any chance whatsoever under any circumstances. Whereas, like I said earlier, the rebuttal was, okay, but does Purdue or Wake Forest or any of those teams have the type of chance? And my answer is not nearly as often as the elite programs, but 10 times more often than the best group of five programs.
I think you're spot on, as always.
Never wrong.
Well, in my opinion, I see both sides of the argument. But for me, it sucks that we have to be talking about stuff like this. You know, back 20 years ago, there'd be no reason to have any of these conversations.
No,
And
why not?
this also goes back to I saw yesterday that NCAA is considering expanding March Madness.
Bad idea. Terrible idea. Doesn't
Why even bother having the idea float in your tiny little brains
because money.
of expanding? I know. I know that's the short answer. But we're ruining that type of sports magic. March Madness is imperfectly perfect. Its chaotic nature is unmatched.
I would
And
go as far as to say the first four and last four didn't even need to be existed. Like
I agree.
the
I
little
agree
play-in
totally.
that we've added didn't need to happen.
I agree totally. That I remember when they made that change, it was questionable at best. And this also goes back to what we were just talking about, the group of five. What was wrong with BCS? Besides the money aspect, what was wrong with BCS? Absolutely nothing. Fans loved it. Of all teams, big or small, BCS was great. Like you were saying, we had BCS Busters. That's what made it entertaining.
And your season
So,
didn't end if you weren't the national champion. If you look at, a team's season now, like Tennessee had a relatively successful 2024 season, I would say. And their season ended by them getting blown out by the eventual national champions. It wouldn't have ended that way in the BCS. They would have had a chance to win a BCS bowl game, which was an accomplishment in the early 2000s, whereas now making the playoff is an accomplishment, but does it really mean anything if you're getting blown out by a team and not even making it close to the national championship?
exactly. Like, I still have major respect for Boise. I still have major respect for SMU.
Yeah.
For getting there, but the system exists so that it means nothing, and that's just it's so wrong in my eyes. And I don't know, it's just so much to comprehend when you think about the people in power care more about money than they actually do about their school. Like, that's why I feel so lucky to have Ren Baker as an AD, right? Where some of the ADs at even these bigger schools, like I'll say like Alabama, Ohio State, like I don't know their ADs. I'm not calling out ADs. I'm just saying some of those ADs in the bigger schools are prioritizing revenue and maybe even revenue for themselves and not necessarily the school. It's all about money and the entertainment product that is being put on the field or put on the court has been getting worse and worse and worse over the past 25 years or even earlier, you could argue, but it's sad. It is just so sad to see. All right, so we lost Matt, so we're cutting to this new segment. Going off of that glum note of college football and college sports in general, we are going to shift to our next conference in our I guess you could call recurring segment of tier lists. So I'm going to go ahead and pull this up. We're going to do Big Ten football. That's what we're going to do here.
Change
So
that banner down there as well.
oh yeah, I got to change the banner. You're right. All right, Big Ten power rankings. There we go. I'm going to pull up his tier list. Obviously, me and Tyler are going to shift it around. And Tyler, we should probably make this quick because we also got to go through games as well for the conference.
That's true. So should we start at the bottom with Purdue?
Yeah, we can get. It's already there.
Yeah. Sorry, Purdue. I mean this with the utmost respect. I don't see you doing much. I like your hire, Barry Odom, as head coach, but outside of that, I don't see Purdue doing anything. I'd be surprised if they win more than 3 or 4 games, if they even get that.
Yeah. Look, we were talking about the Grizzlies with Javon Small going there, and Zach Edey's on the Grizzlies. So you guys had Zach Edey in basketball. You were successful for a while. It's okay. We're gonna leave you down there.
Basketball school, just be happy about that.
Yes. All right. So we want to rename some of these tiers as well.
Nah, we'll leave them.
Okay. So when you think about Maryland and Northwestern down here in the low rebuilding tier,
I'm gonna say I would leave Northwestern there. Northwestern was second to last in my own tier list that I did before the episode.
right?
Uh, not a ton going on for Northwestern. They had a poor 2024 season. If my internet would work, I would pull up their win total for 2025. But I know it's either like 3.5 or 4.5. I would put them in the rebuilding. I would almost get rid of the rebuilding and just have no chance, and put Maryland and Northwestern in the no chance, because rebuilding in college football is an interesting thing. Northwestern's win total is at 3.5. So, like Maryland, I'd be surprised if they win more than four games.
Yeah, I agree with you. The rebuilding thing. There are just so many teams in the Big Ten that I tried to have more separation.
That's
But,
fair. That's fair.
yeah, it's fine.
And then Maryland is interesting. They had a decent 2023 season, and then an underwhelming 2024 season that I believe was 5-7 was their record.
I think you're right.
They don't bring in anything too eye catching from the transfer portal, so I'd put them right there with Northwestern. Not really doing too much. We can leave them in the rebuilding because there are so many teams in the Big Ten, and just have them down there by their lonesome.
All right, so we want to move on to the Michigan State UCLAs of the world, our beloved Rutgers.
This is interesting because I would almost put all three of those teams in bowl contenders in terms of bowl hopeful. Like, I think all three of those teams will fall in between 5-7 or 7-5, and anywhere in between there, I think all three of those teams.
Here, I have a perfect way to rename these tiers then. And then down here, I can put no chance.
There we go.
There we go.
So Michigan State, we'll go right to left. Let's do that as well. Let's
do right to left as we go up.
Yeah, for the power rankings, we'll do like, okay, we believe Maryland is better than Northwestern. So I like that as well. I would put Michigan State on the higher side of bowl hopeful, simply because they have Aiden Childs returning as quarterback.
That's true. Yeah.
They bring in Krishawn McCray and Amari Kelly from the transfer portal at receiver. I don't think they'll be great. I don't think they'll be bad. Like, I would not be surprised if all three of those teams in bowl hopeful finish, one of them 5-7, one of them 6-6, one of them 7-5.
Right. Yeah.
7-5 seems a little generous for any three of those teams. And then I would do UCLA right after Michigan State.
Sadly,
because
that's what I was thinking.
Yeah, I don't have high hopes for Rutgers, even though I want them to succeed. They do have Ethan Kaliakmanis, who I'm high on as a quarterback. I think he can be one of the better Big Ten quarterbacks, but they don't really have a ton of playmaking around him. They lose Kyle Monungai. I think
they're Steve Brantley.
It's gonna be bowl hopeful. So I'd be surprised if they get to 6-6. Rutgers is probably the most likely out of those three to not reach a bowl if two of the other three do. But I like all three of those. I like where they are in the tier list.
Yep. All right, we want to move up here to Wisconsin, Iowa, and Minnesota.
This is the little triangle of hate in the Big Ten, Midwest, the western of the Midwest schools. This is difficult because Iowa is obviously going to be known for its
defense
and non-existent offense. Wisconsin, I thought, was very underwhelming last year, and then Minnesota, I thought, hung in some games that they shouldn't have. I'm sorry, my internet is struggling, so I can't pull up any of the notes that I had.
You're good.
I would leave all three of them in bowl contenders.
Yeah.
Wisconsin, I believe, was the only one of the three to not make a bowl last year. Iowa finished relatively decent record for Iowa. I mean, well, that feels like misled criticism. For not having an offense, Iowa did it decent. I think I would do Minnesota, Iowa, and Wisconsin. And I would almost move Minnesota up a tier to be in
A
terms of
dark horse.
a dark horse. Like, I feel like Minnesota could be the team that beats somebody they're not supposed to. Let me actually pull up if, like I said, my internet wants to work.
If your internet works, just let me know if it doesn't. I can try to pull something up on here too.
We're solid. We are solid. Let me pull up Minnesota's schedule. So they have Buffalo. I'm assuming that's in. I don't even know who that is. FCS school. I don't know what the NW stands for. New something state. Minnesota. They play California. They play Rutgers. So they do have Ohio State. They play Purdue, Nebraska, Iowa, Michigan State, Oregon, Northwestern, and Wisconsin. So they've got Ohio State, Oregon. I'm going to chalk both of those up as losses.
Oh.
But they also have like a relatively easy schedule outside of that. They don't have Penn State. They don't have Illinois. I could see this team fighting for 8 or 9 wins. So
it'd be perfect to have him teetering, but I could put him there.
It's teetering. They're definitely at the top of bowl contenders if you want to put them there just to keep the tiers semi-even.
Well, we could. All right, so, let's try to move a little quicker. We're gonna get through these teams.
They're on the tier. They're on the teeter of bowl contenders.
I agree.
Everybody's. Yeah. Oh, what were you gonna say?
I was gonna say you read out their schedule because I didn't look at their schedule, but yeah, I would agree with you there.
For Nebraska, everybody's high on Dylan Raiola. I'm not. I would move them down into the bowl contender tiers. But
Pat Mahomes the second.
Yeah, Pat Mahomes number 2. I don't see it. If you see it, you can feel free to have them in.
You know what? I'm okay with doing this. I'm okay with having Minnesota up in a dark horse.
I like that. I like that better. Last year was like the first time Nebraska made a bowl game in forever. They have their kickoff is against Cincinnati. I don't know if it's a neutral site. I want to say it is. They play Michigan. They play Penn State. They play USC. Interesting couple road games for Nebraska. I just don't see it where everybody else does. Like, I expect them to be close to top 25 in like the ESPN stuff.
Yeah.
And like AP preseason. Not in it, but close. I just don't see it.
Washington?
Yes. I like where they're at. Yes. I like where they're at. And then same goes for Indiana. Washington had I'm going to try to pull up my notes on my phone because my computer will not work whatsoever. They had a solid 2024 year coming off of a college football playoff appearance and then obviously losing Michael Penix. I like them to improve. So I'm happy with where they are. And then same goes for Indiana. I don't expect them to have nearly as good of a season or, Cinderella story that they did last year, but I don't expect them to drop into not a bowl game either.
Yeah, they still got Kurt Signetti, so anything is possible.
Right now, I think we're pretty perfect. Spot on. Here's where it gets interesting. I would take, because of how the tiers are labeled, I would take every Big Ten team out of playoff contender except for Penn State and put them in conference contender. And here's why. If we are assuming that playoff contender is implying that that team is capable of winning the college football playoff, I do not see Ohio State running it back, and I don't see Oregon winning it all. And here is my main reasoning for that. I looked this up earlier when I was making my own tier list. Only 2, obviously Ohio State and Oregon are going to be playing freshman quarterback, Julian Sayin for Ohio State, and then Moore for Oregon. Only 2 teams have ever won the national championship with a freshman quarterback as their starter. And that was 1985 Oklahoma and 2018 Clemson with Trevor Lawrence. I don't see Ohio State running it back, and I
I
don't
don't
see
either.
making it. I could see them winning the Big Ten. I just don't see them running through the playoff. So I would almost put them in just conference contenders and leave Penn State. They're my early pick to win the Big Ten. I could see somebody upsetting them in the Big Ten championship, but I think Penn State is a true contender, and the other two I do not, even though they will have very successful seasons. I don't know, like they still have Jeremiah Smith.
Right.
So it's like you can't drop them that far. I just don't expect them to win the playoff.
Here's my thoughts. Here's what I'm okay with doing. I am okay with moving Oregon down to the very top of conference contenders. I want to keep Ohio State there, though, just because they are the reigning national champion. You can never count that against them. And I understand what you said. They have a freshman quarterback coming in. And so does Oregon. The difference with Oregon and Ohio State, though, Oregon just had a poor showing in the playoff altogether. And Ohio State, of course, got there and won. So I think purely from a pedigree perspective and the fact that they have the best receiver in the nation,
That's fair.
I think Ohio State still deserves to be in that tier for now, preseason. But I am definitely okay with moving Oregon down.
That's fair. And honestly, I wouldn't even hate you putting Oregon back up because I do think that there is a significant gap between Penn State, Ohio State, and Oregon, and then the next group of teams. Like I think there's a very small gap, in my opinion, between dark horses, conference contenders, and bowl contenders, and then there's a large gap in between conference contenders and playoff contenders.
Yeah, that's fair.
So even if you wanted to move Oregon back up there, I'm fine with them at the top of conference contenders. I would put Illinois above Michigan just because
I think
they
you're
were
right.
Luke Altmaier, and Michigan's season is heavily going to be based on. Why can I not remember anybody's names right now? Bryce
You know more
Underwood.
names than I do.
Michigan's season is going to be heavily dependent on how Bryce Underwood performs as a freshman quarterback. I like that Illinois returns Luke Altmaier. They had a solid year last year. I like Illinois above Michigan. And then as for USC, Michigan, I don't know. Lincoln Riley just needs to find something on the defense. Michigan just needs to find something on the offense. So they're total opposites, pretty much 50-50 for me. But I like the tier with it. I like what we've made.
Yeah, I like it too. You know, it's our conference contender spells Oimsk. I don't know why I find that so funny.
Oimsk.
Oimsk.
They are all letter logos.
Yeah, that's so funny.
We could spell now with Nebraska, Oregon, and Washington.
Yeah.
How many words can we make?
That's funny. Yeah, I like the positioning of this tier. I think that Michigan and USC play each other, which is a perfect segment. I'm going to go ahead and exit out of this. That is a perfect segue over to our little next thing where we want to talk about including the Big Ten. We have our biggest Big Ten games, and I did mine in conference, the biggest in conference games. I'm not sure what you did, but I'll go ahead and read mine out from bottom to top. So start with number 5. Number 5, I have Ohio State versus Illinois. I think that is going to be a big proving game for Illinois to see where they stand in the conference, if they really are competitive. Number 4, I have Oregon versus USC. Again, it's another one of those games where USC proves their competitiveness, but also if Oregon can stay on the pedestal that we've put them on, you know, sort of the top 3 of the conference. So going to be an interesting pendulum game. Number 3, I have Ohio State versus Michigan. That is one of the games of the year. You got to include them in the list. Can Michigan keep the winning streak going? I don't think so. I think Ohio State finally gets over the hump and wins. But number 2, I have Oregon versus Penn State. It's a top 3 matchup in conference. They're all eyes are going to be on that game. That's September 27th. That's a really early game in the season. Going to be a lot of people watching that. And then number 1, I have Penn State versus Ohio State. The 2 teams that we put in the playoff contenders are playing each other on November 1st. Must watch TV. I don't care what's going on that day. You have to turn on that game. Of course, I'm with you. I have Penn State winning the conference, and they have the biggest shot to win the playoffs. But definitely, I can see Ohio State taking it. So who knows? But those are my top 5 games in conference in the Big Ten.
So I'll give you my top 3 in conference because you did as well. But I also do want to say that Ohio State plays Texas in week 1 at home. I think that is more of a test for Arch Manning and the Longhorns than it is for Ohio State. If that game is going to be so telling for what both teams are capable of. They're both breaking in freshman quarterbacks, although Arch has more experience than, Julian Sayin. Sorry, again, struggling with names today. So Arch has more experience than Julian Sayin. It's going to be a huge telling game. Can Arch handle the pressure on the road in what is going to be a packed Ohio State Stadium coming off of a national championship? And so I think that is going to be the biggest non-conference game of the year, period. That's basically 1 versus 2 in the power rankings of the nation, basically.
Yeah.
Also, I have Penn State, Clemson, LSU all up there. In terms of in-conference games, number 3 for me is Ohio State, Michigan. If Ryan Day loses another Ohio State-Michigan matchup, I think there might genuinely be riots to get him out of Ohio State in Ohio.
It's so weird, though, because he just won the Natty.
He
But
just
I know he can't beat Michigan. It's
if he
crazy.
loses 5 straight of the games, I don't know what to say because it shouldn't happen. It shouldn't have happened last year, and it did. And it should not happen this year. At least I don't think. I expect Ohio State to be better than Michigan. So that's number 3. Number 2 and number 1 are both for my title favorites in Penn State. Number 2 is Penn State versus Oregon. Oregon goes to Penn State. It's going to be an electric stadium. Penn State Beaver Stadium is always packed, and the Ducks are coming to town. Going to be a test for freshman quarterback Dante Moore. That's my number 2, and then number 1, like you. No, you had the game as number 1, didn't you?
No, I had the game as number 3. We got the same top 3. Your number 1's going to be Ohio State, Penn State, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, so, we have the same top 3.
Yeah, it's Penn State going to Ohio State. James Franklin has notoriously been known for going 10-2 and not be able to get over the hump in the big games. Well, he's got 2 to prove him wrong this year in Ohio State and Oregon. The Oregon one, I expect him to win fairly easily. I don't think that Oregon is going to be nearly as close to Penn State this year as they were last year. Penn State returns Drew Aller. They return Nick Singleton and Katron Allen. I mean, they have the best running back duo in the country. They've got the potential to average 200 yards per game again on the ground. The only concern is that receiving room is the transfers they picked up gonna pan out. But even if they don't, I could easily see them beating Oregon. It's all about, can they beat Ohio State on the road? Can Drew Aller handle the pressure? Can the Penn State offense finally do something against the Ohio State defense? The only score Penn State had last year against Ohio State was a pick 6. That was the only actual touchdown that Penn State had. So Drew Aller has to calm down, has to perform in a big game. I expect Penn State to be very good this year. They are my early pick to the Big Ten, but that is the number 1 game. Because we had the same top 3, I'm going to give an extra game for a team that isn't Ohio State, Oregon, or Penn State. And that is Michigan at USC.
That's what I thought you were going to say.
That is Michigan at USC. USC's schedule up to Michigan is fairly easy. You had USC versus Illinois in there, correct?
I had Illinois, Ohio State, and number 5.
Okay, I thought you had USC Illinois. USC Illinois could arguably be a bigger game. I tell you what, USC will likely start 4-0. They play Missouri State, Georgia Southern, Purdue, and Michigan State to start the year. They then have a 3-game stretch of playing Illinois, Michigan, and Notre Dame. If USC comes out of that stretch with only one loss, you're looking at USC being playoff contenders.
I agree.
So it is going to be about, can Lincoln Riley get that defense figured out? I wanted to give another game because we weren't, something other than Penn State, Ohio State, and Oregon.
Yeah.
USC at Illinois, Michigan at USC, and then USC at Notre Dame is going to be 3 huge games for USC season.
You said
That's
it.
all I got.
I mean, yeah.
That's all I got.
So those are our big Big Ten games. Big games in the Big Ten.
And you said you had Penn State winning it all?
I have Penn State winning Big Ten. Yeah.
I have Penn State winning Big Ten as well against Ohio State.
Yeah. That'll be the title game.
And
But then again, like I said, whenever I was talking about number 1, Ohio State could win because, like you were saying, Drew Aller sometimes can't calm himself down.
And it could just be that, Ohio State versus Michigan effect, in where that even though Ohio State is the far better team, Ohio State just can't seem to get over the hump against Michigan. Same thing goes for Penn State. Penn State may be the very far better team this year. They just can't get over the Ohio State hump.
Yeah. So now that we have those covered, I'm going to go ahead and have us do a little quick fire here. Let me put this ticker up. So we're going to go ahead and just end on our what should I say? Opinions. Yes, that's the word I was looking for. Our opinions on the most overrated and underrated teams in college football. I'm going to let you go first because I really don't have any teams in mind for this. I sort of just have a few tabs pulled up of teams that initially came to mind. And my answers for this are not going to be objectively correct or incorrect, as are yours, but you know what I'm saying. This isn't like a deep research thing for me. So you go ahead first, and I shall rebuttal.
So I had a couple thoughts. My first initial thought for overrated was, which this is not the team I'm going to pick, but my first initial thought for overrated was Indiana. I expect them to be AP top 15 to start the year. I just don't see them having back-to-back Cinderella stories in the Big Ten. But that's not my pick. My second thought was Florida and South Carolina. I could see one of them or both being underrated, and then I could also see them both being overrated.
Yeah.
We've heard a lot of talk about Florida and South Carolina in the offseason, but then I also feel like they're not going to be that high in the AP top 25. And so I didn't take either of those teams. I'm going to go for both teams, overrated and underrated, to the Big 12. Overrated, I'm going to go Iowa State. Because Iowa State has had a good stretch of good seasons, they retain Rocco Becht. I have full confidence that they'll be an AP top 25 team to start the season, and I just don't see them finishing an AP top 25 team. They lose Jalen Noel and Higgins. That was Rocco Becht's threats. They obviously return Rocco Becht. I just don't see the offense being as dominant as it was last year without those two wide receiver key pieces. So I would not be surprised if Iowa State falls in the Big 12 to the middle of the pack when it's all said and done. They're 7-5, maybe even 6-6. For my underrated is another Big 12 team that I genuinely think is a Big 12 contender, and that's Baylor. Dave Aranda was on the hot seat to finish 2023 when West Virginia beat them to have, I think they were 4-8 to finish the year, if I'm not mistaken. 2024, they come back. They finished the year very strong. They had an 8-4 season. They lost to LSU, but they played a semi-close competitive game against a solid SEC squad that had a very good offense. And they returned Sawyer Robertson, who in my eyes, is probably the most dark horse Heisman contender in the country. Sawyer Robertson, if you have not watched him, has an electric arm. He's not a bad runner. He's a very, very athletic, versatile quarterback. He's going to have himself a solid year. I could very well see Baylor in Arlington for the Big 12 championship. So there's my two underrated teams, or underrated and overrated, both from the Big 12. Iowa State, overrated. Baylor, underrated. I hope Iowa State proves me wrong, and I hope Baylor proves me right.
I like the pick of Baylor there. That genuinely surprised me because from what I'm looking at, Baylor was one of the teams chosen there, and I like the Baylor pick for underrated. But then again, do we play them this year? I think we do.
We do not. No,
We don't.
we do not play Baylor.
Well, thank the Lord. Then I was going to say I hope they don't. Hope they
Don't
don't. Beat us.
Don't want Sawyer Robertson to light up the Zach Alley defense.
That's true. All right, I'm gonna go quick fire for these. I'm gonna say a little bit about it, but not much for both these teams. So for overrated, I know we talked about them in our ACC power rankings episode. I have Miami being overrated. Where they're ranked right now seems a little high, and they face one of the toughest schedules in the country with the opener at Notre Dame. I know we talked a little bit about that. Who do you have winning where?
Do they play Florida again?
Good question.
I believe they do.
Florida. Let me search
So
that real
that's
quick.
if
Florida.
so, that's two really tough non-conference games, and you don't even consider the games they have in conference.
Let me see. Florida, Miami.
I believe they do play Florida. If so, I mean, I like the pick of Miami. I could very well see them falling off again.
Let me see. I'm just checking to make sure that they do play Miami football. Yes, they play Florida on September 20th. It's in Miami though, but yes, they do play Florida. So because of that tough schedule that Miami has, I think they could be overrated. And as I'm seeing here, one poll has them ranked number 3 preseason, which to me seems egregious.
In the ACC or in the country?
In the country.
No, there's no way. What poll you're looking at?
That's a great question. It just has and it doesn't have any references here. It's 24/7 sports. But another one that I'm looking at here for my underrated is in the SEC, and they are the Auburn Tigers as an underrated team. If you look at Auburn's schedule, the only predicted ranked teams that Auburn has to play the entire season are Texas A&M, Georgia, and Alabama. Those are the only projected ranked teams that Auburn is going to have to face all season. Not to mention that they got Jackson Arnold from Oklahoma, and they went out and got Eric Singleton from Georgia Tech. So Auburn looks to be pretty good when you take their schedule into consideration as well. That's who I have for my underrated team.
I think I really like both of our underrated picks. And do you know what's interesting about our underrated picks is that Auburn and Baylor play each other in the non-conference. So you've picked Auburn, I've picked Baylor, two teams we both think are relatively underrated. They play each other to start the year. At least I think that is opening weekend. I could be mistaken, but I do know they play each other. I like Auburn. We haven't done our SEC power rankings or SEC big games. I'm going to throw it out there that I think this is the year that Auburn gets over the hump and beats Georgia. However, I do want to say that I've seen Auburn on several AP top 25s. They do not deserve to be there.
Not yet.
Underperformed so often in the recent years. And to be in a top 25, even though you're underperforming, and I get they have high recruiting rankings every year. They're always in the top 10, top 5. I think they were number 1 not too long ago, if I'm not mistaken, in recruiting rankings. They bring in solid players. They have Cam Coleman returning. They have Jackson Arnold, right? Jackson Arnold's their transfer coordinator they bring in. I think their season is heavily going to be on how Jackson Arnold can perform. He obviously was underwhelming at Oklahoma. I like the pick of Auburn, but I could also see it going horribly wrong for Auburn. Very 50-50 pick, but I like it.
Yeah, I think more than likely they're going to be better, just because last year was underwhelming.
That's fair.
So
The past several years have been underwhelming.
yeah, not since what was the Return Six in the Iron Bowl? What year was that?
Oh, that was a while ago.
Yeah, that was like Auburn's last glorious
The,
moment.
the kick,
If you take away basketball,
the kick six.
the kick six, that's what it is. Yeah.
I'm gonna look at their records in the previous years. 2024 5-7, 2023 6-7, 2022 5-7, 2021 6-7, 2020 6-5, 2019 9-4, 2018 8-5, 2017 10-4, and since then they have had Gus Malzahn, Brian Harsin, and Hugh Freeze. They have had 3 coaches in 6 years. Not a good record in the past 6-7 years.
You got to turn it around sometime, Auburn. I think this could be your year.
Sooner or later.
It
is a make or break year for Hugh Freeze for me. If Hugh Freeze can't turn it around, I think he's gone.
That's true. Yeah, they'll have another coach.
They'll have another coach.
All right, well, ladies and gentlemen, I think that's going to do it for this episode. We did have a lot of fun filming this. A lot of good stuff to talk about. I was surprised by the Big Ten.
And we hit just about an hour and a half.
Yep, hour 32, hour 33 actually. So, all right, well, everybody, make sure to follow all of our socials up above our heads. Like, comment, and subscribe on the YouTube video. Hopefully, I can get this out on Spotify. Cross my fingers. Maybe not, but I'm going to see if I can. So, for our Spotify listeners, make sure to follow us and go follow our socials again on Instagram, X, Facebook. So. All right, that is going to do it for this episode. So for me and Tyler and Matt, who sadly had to leave earlier, we will see you on the next episode.
Goodbye, America.